It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
Wow.
What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, the show that looks at the money behind the music industry with me, Steve Lamack, MBE, and Music Ally's Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge. That's an in-joke, by the way, if you missed last week's show. Stuart, how was your first week back at work after the festive period?
Do you know, it's been all right. The news hasn't been too overwhelming. My inbox wasn't overwhelming, and now it's getting to the point again of terribleness.
Strange, because we had a deluge of emails from Tuesday onwards about new releases. It was almost as if whoever had turned off the music industry on December the 23rd had suddenly flicked the switch and turned the music industry back on. And it's shaping into, it's much busier than January's of recent years, I think. I mean, the very first week, our show, at least, almost picked itself because there were less releases than usual and it was much more manageable. But all of a sudden, I had a look at the list of potential playlist tracks for Six Music this week. There's a playlist meeting every Tuesday, and it was almost as long as some of the lists which you see around May, June time, from April through to early June, which is sort of the busiest time. If you're a musician, by the way, here's a tip. There's 2 weeks in the middle of August where the number of records up for playlist is very minimal. If you want to put yourself in front of people in the music media, there's a couple of weeks in the middle of August, which is, well, shall I say, at least a comparatively better time. But anyway, in terms of breaking news then, so not too busy, but I'll tell you what we should start with this week, because at the start of last week's programme, we gave some of our predictions of things that we thought might happen or dominate the news in 2025. One of the things I mentioned was the government's consultation on ticketing, which I said that will be announced any day soon. It was announced the day after our last episode. We should talk about this. It's the consultation which is called Putting Fans First, a consultation on the resale of live events tickets. And it primarily, I guess it's mainly about ways of stamping out or at least restricting the operations of ticket touts, which is something which Labour had already committed to even before they came to power. But this is I quote you from the government's own press release about the consultation, which says the consultation will look at new measures to prevent consumers being fleeced by ticket touts as part of government's plan for change. It will also look into pricing practices in the live event sector, including so-called dynamic pricing. And I'm not expecting much change in the way of dynamic. I don't think anyone's particularly going to interfere in how people set ticket prices. I think that's more about transparency, I think, and the fact that when you log in to buy a ticket, you know exactly how much that ticket is going to cost. But I think those are the main points on the agenda. Do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, I think so. And like you say, it was trailed last year. I think Keir Starmer gave a speech, didn't he? When he said, we're going to do this, we're going to cap resale prices. And that's, I think, the big thing, that if you're reselling tickets online, there's going to be a cap, so you can't sell them for 4 times the price. Although it seems to, and you can tell me probably, that it feels like they were saying the consultation is going to explore a range of what the cap could be. from the original price up to a 30% uplift. So that could be the maximum, which is kind of interesting to have a figure on that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the chief idea, the idea which a lot of people are gathering around is this, is say a price resale cap, which means you can only resell a ticket for a certain percentage above the original cost. So it's, in a way, that's good because it means you and me, they're not outlawing reselling tickets, which was mentioned at one point. It means me and you, we can still resell tickets, but not at a huge profit. Except, as you say, the options. I mean, it could be anything at the moment. I think the industry obviously would favour a much lower uplift, a much lower markup. So something around 10% you could add, say, if you're selling on a ticket. But in the actual, if you go to the consultation, it says one of the questions which it asks is, what do you think the maximum uplift of a ticket resale, what should it be? No uplift at all, 10% or less, between 10 and 20%, between 20 and 30%. Now, if it's 30%, I would argue that some secondary ticket outfits and, to quote the government, some touts, if it's 30%, I think, is that still worth your while? Because it seems high, and I think the industry certainly would much prefer it to be lower.
I read a thing saying, I think this is a stat I just picked off the internet, but it said I think the average uplift on secondary sites is currently 50%. So I think it's not that much, like you say, it's not that big a difference. But the other thing I thought was interesting, I think they're suggesting limiting the number of tickets you can resell to however many you're allowed to buy on the primary market. So, for example, if Oasis tickets go on sale and you're only allowed 2 per credit card, in theory, you could only relist 2. And that could be interesting, couldn't it, in terms of people who are trying to kind of hoover up loads of tickets and sell them. Although it feels like the sort of thing where there'll be loopholes, whether it's...
Also, how many different accounts will a ticket tout, say, be in charge of? So it's just multiples of 2, isn't it, I suppose?
I guess you're increasing their admin, giving them a headache. I think the other thing, it talks about stronger fines and a licensing regime for secondary ticketing sites. So it sounds like this is the important thing, I think, when you have new laws and new rules, what's the punishment if people don't keep to them? And they seem to be thinking about that, don't they? And they're saying, right, well, there will be stronger fines. And when they say a licensing regime, I don't know if that means that you could lose your license to be a resale platform if you don't keep to the rules. I'm not sure if that's the implication here or not, but they sound like they're going to have some teeth.
I mean, there are an awful lot of questions. If you'd like to know more, dear listener, by the way, or you'd like to contribute to the consultation, there's a full list of all the questions on the gov.uk website. If you put in something like fairer for fans, you'll find it there. You can have a look. But there's quite a lot of questions about how responsible the secondary ticket selling platforms should be. Question 14 is, should resale platforms be required by law to verify certain key information provided by the reseller about a ticket? For example, original price and location within the venue. There's all sorts of things. And as you say, should there be a series of fines, and how will they be implemented? I mean, obviously, I think one of the reasons Labour have turned to this is partly, and they mentioned this in the introduction to the consultation, is that according to research by, I think it's Virgin Media O2, ticket touts cost music fans an additional £145 million each year. Yes. Which is just, I mean, it's an eye-watering amount, isn't it? Anyway, we shall see what comes of this. But if you'd like to know more, the consultation is online now. Next, and I simply have one line of notes for this, which is, it's a big moment for TikTok in the US. Stuart.
Let me add it. It is. It's a very big moment. Shall I go into the background, I suppose, in case anyone's not been following this closely?
I think you should.
So Joe Biden, who will soon not be the president. Well, no, he will be. You still are the president when you leave, don't you? That's told. But the outgoing administration in the US put this law in place saying that ByteDance, which is TikTok's parent company, they had to sell TikTok in the US by 19th of January or have it banned from the app stores. And this is about links with the parent company and the Chinese government and it's all about national security issues. They don't want TikTok in the US to be owned by a Chinese company. And TikTok's been fighting all the way along. And then Friday, there was kind of the last chance saloon for its efforts to avoid this. It was a hearing in the Supreme Court where TikTok's lawyers argued that the law will harm free speech. I think it's 170 million Americans using TikTok. Their free speech is going to be harmed if you ban it. And the government arguing, no, the harm to national security is bigger, and that's why we think it should be sold or banned. And the Supreme Court judges, I can't remember how many there are. Is it 7 of them? I need to really bone up on my American politics, don't I? They were hearing these arguments, asking questions. And the gist of it seems to be from their questions that they were leaning towards not changing the law and giving TikTok that deadline of you have to be sold by next Sunday or we're going to ban you. They seem to be leaning towards the fact that they were more worried about national security than they are about the kind of the potential freedom of speech harms. And the wild card, as in so many things right now in the world, is that the day after this deadline falls, the new president, Donald Trump, takes office. His inauguration's on Monday. And he's been promising to save TikTok. This is part of his campaign. He said, I will save TikTok. He likes TikTok partly because he's quite popular on there, which is obviously a big thing in his mindset. You know, people like me on TikTok. Mm-hmm. His kind of movement, that kind of Make America Great Again, they've had quite good traction on TikTok. And he also sees it as, or in the past, he's talked of it as something he likes in comparison to Facebook, which he didn't like because they cracked down on him. Although in recent days, there's all kinds of stuff going on in recent days about Meta, Facebook's company, jumping to try and avoid Trump's wrath and doing all kinds of stuff that's going to designed to carry for. So it's all very, very moving. But so this deadline is Sunday. And the Supreme Court will rule in the coming days. And sod's law, they will issue a ruling as we stop recording now. And when we go out tomorrow, it will be late. But they will say a ruling saying, yes, we're going to postpone this deadline or we're going to overturn this law, or they'll issue a ruling saying we're not. So as things stand, TikTok has said, if we don't get this overturned, we will shut the app down. We're not going to sell it. We'll shut the app down. So as of Sunday, TikTok won't be available in the US and it won't work there. Right. And then there's another wild card, another marvelous gentleman wild card. Overnight, there are reports that the Chinese government is thinking maybe we could sell TikTok in the US to Elon Musk and let him run it. And that's a genuine report doing the wires today that Elon Musk might come in because he's obviously quite close with the Trump administration. Maybe he's done such a grand stand-up job of running Twitter that maybe he should have TikTok. So there's a lot of moving parts here. TikTok may shut down in the US on Sunday. Elon Musk may suddenly appear and try and buy it. Or who knows what's happening. And then Trump will take power and his administration will be in charge of overseeing this law that he seemingly doesn't agree with.
I mean, we should mention, I mean, the reason why this is obviously important to us is that TikTok has become a major part of the big record labels' marketing plan now, isn't it? The amount of music which is available on TikTok is astonishing, and the impact it can have on certain tracks. Obviously, the ones that go viral do very well out of TikTok, and there's also some money to be made by the artists there, as well as the promotional opportunities.
It's true. I mean, every big album coming out in the first 6 months of this year, they will already have planned their campaign, and TikTok is likely to be a really big part of it. So they're now having to sort of sit there and go, right, if it's banned, what do we do? What they probably do is they have plan Bs, which involve doing more on Instagram, which has a TikTok-like feature, or YouTube, which has its YouTube Shorts. So labels are really sitting there this week going, right, we might have to tear up half our marketing plan and redo it. And then, there's a lot of artists who are on TikTok. And again, if you're an artist in America, in the US, it's unclear whether you'll be able to use the app after the ban. Like, you won't be able to download it for sure, but will it still work there? And if not, how do you publish your videos on TikTok? And what does it mean? For example, TikTok has a whole distribution arm called SoundOn, where actually you can upload your music to TikTok and then they distribute it for you to other streaming services. If you're an American artist doing that, that may go if it shuts down. So it's a big story, and it's weird because I think in the bigger scheme of things, like Trump taking office, God knows what's going to happen on his first day. God knows what he'll announce, what laws he'll put in place. There's a lot of bigger things going on, and so it does feel a little bit. Sometimes I feel a little bit cautious about saying TikTok is the biggest decision he'll make, because there's all kinds of stuff that could happen.
Yeah.
But for the music industry, especially in the US, they are all watching this and going, what is going to happen and what do we have to do about it?
Right. This next story, I mean, how many times do suits like this hit the headlines? But this one, apparently, this is one of the more interesting stories about copyright and an artist going, hang on a second, you've nicked my song. In this case, Travis Scott, SZA and Future are being sued by Victory Boyd and her publishing company, Songs of Glory, for allegedly ripping off her song, Like the Way It Sounds, to create their 2023 hit, Telekinesis. Who is Victory Boyd, and does Victory... This is where my local newspaper training comes in. And does Victory have a chance of victory?
It's just good that she's not called Defeat, because that would be nominative terms at the worst. So this is, I mean, MBW actually called this the first blockbuster copyright infringement lawsuit of the year, which is kind of a phrase that begs to think we're going to see a lot more of these. I think we all know this. So Victory Boyd, she is a songwriter and an artist signed to Rock Nation, like you say. She has her own publishing company. And this is unusual in comparison to some of the ones we talked about recently, because a lot of the lawsuits we talked about, aren't they? They're a song from like the 1970s or 80s,
yes,
that someone says has been ripped off. Whereas this is it's 2019. She wrote this song called Like the Way It Sounds, and it's this really tangled story, according to the court filing, where I think she sent the original demo to Kanye West, and he was going to work with it and use it for one of his albums, but didn't. And then she claims he played it to Travis Scott, who then got hold of a copy and used it when making Telekinesis. And then he got SZA on board and Future. And so the argument here is that she hadn't released it. She kind of had shared it with someone she wanted to be a collaborator. And then it got taken on and used. And it's also interesting because she actually has a songwriting credit on the song that's been released. So I think she is listed as one of the co-songwriters.
Really?
The lawsuit says she has an 8% share, I think, of the songwriting. But her argument is this was done without her permission and without her knowledge.
Right.
So it's not that they haven't credited her. It's that she says, well, I wasn't asked. And I think it all came to a head. There was an advert wanted to use it, the song. And so they came to her as 8% of the songwriting and said, can we use the song that you've co-written? And she said, what? Hang on, what? No. And that's what's kind of sparked this. So
right, okay. So it's different to what we've usually dealt with in the past then, which is somebody saying that these 8 bars are obviously influenced my song. This is more where tracing back where the song has come from, and it being, as you say, being used without permission.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it's one of those, should we do our usual line here? It's almost certainly going to be settled rather than go to court, because it's in everyone's interest to settle it. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think this happens all the time in the industry. If you're a songwriter, you share demos with people and you say, there's a lot of this stuff going on in the industry where you have written a song and you finished it and you send it to someone and say, could we work together on this?
Oh yeah, I mean all the time, isn't it? Because major artists, some of whom don't write their own songs, obviously there are publishing companies on a daily basis forwarding them songs from songwriters they have on their books. So yeah, songs are constantly flying around, aren't they? I mean, imagine how many songs are punted to a Beyonce album, or some of the big American pop acts will receive probably hundreds of songs a week.
Yeah, and the nature of songwriting now is often you might take a song and you might use a part of it or build on it. Often you can. It's not just someone writes one song and Beyonce uses it and there's one songwriter. Often these things do go to other writers and bits of them get chopped and chosen, and that process can cause this kind of issue where someone says, I did share it willingly at this point, but this thing that happened later wasn't. So yes, we'll see. I mean, it's one of those lawsuits I think shines a light on the processes at work and why it's not always that someone has heard a song and ripped it off.
Yeah,
there can be things. But interesting, Kanye West, who seems to have been quite a key figure in how this song made its way from her to Travis Scott, he's not a defendant in the lawsuit. So he doesn't seem to be in trouble at the moment,
right?
Which I thought was quite interesting, but I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you saw that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
I mean, the other thing is these cases take an awful lot of time, and they probably are very expensive. It's high. You've got to be really convinced that there's a possibility of winning at the end of it, I think. Otherwise, it's a real gamble. There was that Ed Sheeran case, which obviously that was one of the times where I think had Ed been accused by somebody of stealing a part of a song, I think. Anyway, but that case was settled last year, which brings us quite nicely, actually, talking of young Ed Sheeran this week announced the launch of a new foundation that will invest in music education for young people. I'm all for this, but tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
actually
just well known.
Actually, hang on a second, just before you do, because I know there might be a problem here. It's 2 points, right? I suppose first of all, my first point is on a personal level. I'm in the slightly embarrassing situation that when it comes to Ed Sheeran, because I've never really engaged with his music, but at the same time, I don't think you can argue that he did work fantastically hard to get where he is, and he's also been a big champion of grassroots venues. So obviously, I applaud him. Point 2 I should make before Stuart does this story is Stuart supports Norwich City, and Ed sponsors their rivals Ipswich Town. So anything derogatory that Stuart might now say, or if he delivers this story you're about to hear, listeners, through gritted teeth, then you'll know why. But on you go.
Yeah, well, no, so I was going to mention that, but I was going to be very magnanimous about it. So I will proceed to do so. Slow on my reputation. I mean, Ed has made a shed load of money. You know, he's one of in terms of bang for buck, he's a solo artist. He plays alone on stage. He plays to stadiums. He's massive stream sales. He's made a lot of money. And I think like a lot of artists at his level, he's been thinking, what can I do with this money? What can I do? Like, there's more to life than my career of making money. What can I do with the money I've earned? And so you're right. He is, and actually, Ipswich, Norwich Rival aside, he has invested in his local team and done things for them. And good on him. Although I'm not too keen on the choice. He launched his own hot sauce a year and a half or 2 years ago. So he got into kind of launching other kinds of products because he loves hot sauce. And like you say, he's really put his money in his mouth in terms of the Music Venue Trust and the independent venues. So he's been like, he is by all accounts a good egg. Like, I've talked to people at his record label and they say he's good to work with, a solid guy, thinks about things. He thanks people when they've worked with him on something, so he seems like a good bloke. And this kind of bears that out. So he's set up the Ed Sheeran Foundation, and the cause it's focusing on is music education for young people. So, children and kids. And we've talked about it, haven't we? Every so often we talk about grassroots music in terms of venues, but also about music in schools, access to music for kids. So his foundation is going to work with grassroots education organizations and state schools. And they're going to give him instruments and kit and studio and practice time and music lessons and mentorship. So it is a good thing, I think, and it ties into something happening in the UK at the moment, which I think we've touched on it, but maybe not. Maybe we could do more about it next year. That music has been kind of ill-served, hasn't it, by the education system in recent years? Like it was kind of sidelined a bit. Maybe there weren't qualified music teachers at schools. There wasn't as much time and access stuff. And now I think the government has been talking about having a music education plan. The music industry talks about it a bit more. And now Ed Sheeran is saying, yeah, I'm putting some money into this. So I'm I am, football rivalry aside, all for this, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, this, because any opportunity, because music, it's all about having. It's just there should be access for all to music. For anyone who wants to pick up an instrument, a young person who wants to pick up and play an instrument, it's just about opportunity, isn't it? And if this increases the opportunity for anyone to have a go, to see, whether they have a particular talent for whatever it is in music, I think encouraging young people into music. And I think there was a great bit in the story that I read. He makes the point that a lot of people, and I'm sure maybe not the case these days, but certainly when I was growing up, music wasn't seen as a proper job. And so it doesn't get a certain amount of investment. And sometimes, certain educational authorities won't, throw money at it. And it's just that sort of, when your folks say, well, that's not a proper job. But Ed Sheeran saying it is a proper job. There are thousands of people who work in music. It creates billions for the British economy, and yet we don't put enough money into encouraging the next generation who will be part of this. So I think this is a great thing. Well done.
And he talked about the team around him in that I think he did an Instagram post and talked about the team around me. He's very cognizant of what makes him his money, what makes his career work is the people around him in the system. So I think it's weird. I mean, we could go back to that Ed Sheeran. His music, I like some of his songs. I don't know all of it very well, but people get weirdly cross about Ed Sheeran, don't they? I don't know if it's because he's so big that maybe when you're that level of bigness, people get cross about you. But nothing I've seen of him ever. He doesn't seem like a monster. He doesn't, he seems to have a good head on his shoulders, even when he's become big. So, I can't really get angry about him. And I'm glad this is happening.
There you go. There.
No gritted, not a single teeth was gritted during that.
Everybody.
That
anyone who's got a beef with Ed Sheeran for whatever reason, if a Norwich City fan can say this, then really, it's all over. But again, well done, Ed. Although as private, I would say that's probably enough, Ed. Actually, I say that, but before we sign off, just one very quick story, which is back on the topic of live music as it goes. And this is, as you've just mentioned, it's another initiative which Mr. Sheeran has been a supporter of. This is Music Venue Properties, which is the project dreamt up by the Music Venue Trust. We've mentioned it before. Music Venue Properties is a charitable community benefit society which aims to, it's trying to buy up grassroots venues to ensure their long-term future. So they raised, I think in the first year, something like £2.3 million, and then started to acquire venues. The idea being you can then release the venues from having to worry about paying ever-increasing rent. So much of a venue's income goes on rent to the landlord. So you take away some of that. Also, it gives the venues some sort of a more solid future, because if you don't have to worry about what will happen when the lease is up. And there are a lot of venues where the people who run them would like to spend a bit of money making them better. We'll do the toilets up, we'll improve the sound system, we need some new lights. We would do all that, but we're not going to invest because our lease is up in a year's time and we don't know if the landlord will renew it. So you have a much clearer idea of your future. Anyway, the reason I'm mentioning all this is because Music Venue Properties bought another venue, which they announced last week. So it's this, in this case, this time around, the much loved Newport venue Le Pub is now part of the MVP community. I think there was a gig. I think our old friend Get Cape Wear Cape, Sam Duckworth, went down and played, but there was a gig, I think, and of course the obligatory unveiling of a plaque. Yes, and they're a lovely group of people, Sam and the gang at Le Pub. But the future of Le Pub is now safe. I'd love to know how much they're getting these venues for. I'd love to know if landlords, as soon as they get a whiff of MVP wanting to buy, what that does to the price of a venue. But maybe we'll talk to somebody about that in the coming months.
When you said that, When you said that, I'd love to know what it was like. You almost sound like you were thinking in the back of your brain, I could buy it.
Yeah. No, I
Do
wish.
you ever have that thought, or do you hear it? Do you see enough of the business to go, no, that would be terrible?
Well, I have never, ever, I have never bought a lottery ticket. I wouldn't even know how to fill one in. So it's a dumb question. What would you do if you won the lottery? But, it's a choice, isn't it? Put money into Colchester United, buy a venue, buy some venues, probably buy a venue. Imagine being the owner of a venue. I mean,
you need if you were the owner and you could do people running it who knew what they were doing, so all you had to do was kind of turn up and look proud. That's what you need. You need a team around you who know what they're doing, and then you can just like a kind of like in football though, be the controlling shareholder without actually having to appoint and fire managers. And
well, we can but dream. That's it. Time's up for this week. Thank you very much for listening. If you have enjoyed the show, please do subscribe in your podcast app, and if you haven't already and you have some time, give us a review and a rating, because it helps us in the in the complicated ways of algorithms that I don't really understand, but it helps us reach more people. It'd be much appreciated. Or if you have any spare change in the coin jar and you'd like to support the show, we now have a Patreon page where you can become a Price of Music fan or super fan for as little as £2 a month. Just go to the Patreon website, Patreon. It's at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic if you want to find out more. And finally, we are still taking questions. If you have a question which you'd like answered on the program, anything about the music industry and how its finances work, email us your questions to thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. And that's it. You're away next week at a conference, I think.
Oh, do you know it's our own conference, Music LA running conference in London. Yeah, so I'm interviewing the boss of the IFPI, which is going to be quite fun.
Tell us, remind people what is the IFPI?
It's the global labels body. So she's called Victoria Oakley. It's a fascinating character. She's now boss of the recorded industry body, but she was before that. She used to be the ambassador to Barbados, I think. She was an ambassador to.
What a life!
She's a diplomatic veteran, and then she went to Google, and so that's that. But yeah, it's gonna be exciting. We've got Apple speaking about streaming fraud. There's gonna be kind of some good stories coming out of it, I think. So when I do come back, I'll come back with intel.
Excellent. In the meantime, I'm delighted to say that in Stuart's place next week, fingers crossed, all being well, I'll be interviewing former Cocteau twin and now head of the brilliant record label Bella Union Records, Simon Raymond, will be our guest next week. Till then, take care of yourselves, everybody. Cheerio.